welcome to the Stories on Tape podcast. I'm your host, Josh Robinson, and today we're mixing it up a little bit. We are doing what I'm going to call a friends and family episode. This week, and every time we do one of these, we're going to talk to someone who I have a very special relationship with, friends or family, hence the title, and just kind of tell stories that we have in common, hear a little bit about how people that I have a close relationship see me in a fun way. I think that'll be fun. And just kind of hear like first memories of each other, funny stories we have in common, all that fun stuff. So my very first guest with a Friends and Family episode is, of course, Jacob Dowdy. Hi, Jacob.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for having me.
How are you today, sir? Of course. How are you tonight?
I'm really good. It's a Sunday. I'm a worship pastor, so that's been a long day.
So Jacob is very graciously giving some of his time after singing at two services, or there's still two services?
No, just thank God, one service. One service.
Beautiful. So Jacob, I think I want to start with you. Give us a little background on you, where you came from growing up, all the way up to us meeting. Give me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Gadsden, Alabama, good old Northeast Alabama. I literally was there from birth until graduation of high school. I was practically in the same school system the whole time. Gadsden City Schools, it's a place to be. And just had a lot of interest in the arts when I was in school. My parents divorced at a young age, and so I got into theater as sort of like a therapy almost. I did theater. I was in choir. I was in band, marching and concert band. And so that led me to a passion for music and just the arts in general, which led me to get a degree. But I also had a really strict religious upbringing and was raised in the same denomination as Josh. And so yes. I went to a school. Affiliated with the church that I grew up in, Freed Hardman, in Henderson, Tennessee. And I loved it. Loved every single minute of it. Really was wonderful. And made a lot of great friends there. But in my time there, I started attending a church called Campbell Church of Christ in Jackson, Tennessee, which is just like 30 minutes up the road from where the university is. And that's where I met Josh. He was sitting in a pew and he sitting down. And I don't know how many of you know Josh, but he's very tall. And me and my now wife, we were just dating at the time, went up to him and we're just introducing ourselves because we could tell we were on the same age. And my wife was like, "So when do you graduate? What high school do you go to?" And then Josh stands up and he's like, "Well, actually, I have been graduated for 2-3 years now, and I'm a news anchor." And she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But so that's how I met Josh. That's how it came to be.
Yes, that is my first memory as well of you guys, is sitting there and Andy asking me when I graduate high school. And I was like, well, actually, I have graduated college and I work at the local news station. So it was great. It was great. I want to know, so I want to talk about our first time hanging out together one-on-one.
Yes.
I had talked to some of the leaders at the church that we went to together, Campbell Street, and just wanting to use some of my video talents a little more, seeing if they wanted that. And you had just very recently kind of stepped into a role kind of incorporating more video and audio. So I want to hear it from your side first. We went to Chick-fil-A. And if you know the Chick-fil-A in Jackson, it is a hoppin' place. Oh. But I want to hear your side of it first. What do you remember about that fateful day?
So I had just been hired on part-time. I was still a full-time student, if you remember. And Peggy and Steve Weaver, who Josh knows, had offered for me to stay with them for the summer. And so when Josh found out that I was going to be here through the summer, he was like, "We need to get together because I have lots of ideas for how we can really amp up the media ministry here at Campbell Street." And I was like, yeah. I'm like, free volunteer. Yeah. Free AV work. Yeah. And so, and I knew nothing at all about Josh at this time. Like we had not hung out once. And so I think I got your number or something, or like we messaged on Facebook. That's what it was. We didn't even have each other's phone numbers at the time. And you messaged me on Facebook and we were going forth and you were like, well, how about Chick-fil-A? I think it was like a Tuesday, just like a random day of the week. You got off of work ridiculously early at that time because you got to work ridiculously early at that time.
Correct.
And so we met for lunch. And I remember going to the Chick-fil-A and it was so awkward because neither of us knew how to approach one another. And we were like, so what are your ideas? And so from there, we just started talking. And I really just got to know Josh. I got to know you more because, I think you asked me like, where I was from and, what I was interested in, blah, blah, blah. We realized then we had a mutual love for musical theater. And I think at the very, very end of the deal was when I was like, okay, so let's talk about video because we were just enjoying the conversation so much. Like, I think I had realized, and I think one of the things you spoke to was like you being at Campbell. I don't know how long it had been at that time, like 2 or 3 years already, or maybe not even that long. I don't even remember. And just how difficult it had been to make friends. Yeah, but like just how difficult it had been for you to make friends your age. You had a lot of older, like parental age friends who had sort of taken you in and were like taking care of you and loved you really well. But there were not a lot of people our age at the church there at that time. And now there's a trillion of them, which is insane. But we just found a friend in each other and it was great,
Yes, I agree 100%. Yes, that group definitely like took me in. It was very nice to have them. They loved me. They made sure like I was taken care of. We, life groups is what we called them. And so that was very nice. But yes, that fateful day at Chick-fil-A definitely sealed this friendship. And I'm very, very thankful for that. Yeah, I think I'd only been at church because that was probably, when did you graduate?
I graduated in 2020, but I wasn't graduated at this time. It was probably,
so that was probably
2019
summer
or maybe
2019.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
So that was, I had been there for maybe a year, but yeah, it had been really hard, especially like my first 6 months there to just like, meeting people after coming from college where it's like you walk down the hall and there's 30 people that you could hang out with at any time. So it was very different and very difficult. So it was a very, very welcome thing for you to come into my life. And I'm very, very thankful for that. So then we got the AV kind of rolling. We started like slides at church on Sundays. We put together a couple videos. We were, doing all that kind of fun stuff. And then the pandemic hit. And
the pandemic.
We slowly but surely over like a few weeks kind of realized like we're not going to be meeting in person much longer. What are we going to do? And that's when Jacob, I don't know how this all transpired exactly, but the decision was made that we were going to live stream our church service. So walk me through, because I was a part of like setting it up, but what was the like decision making process if you remember any of it?
Well, I remember it. Do not worry. It was insane because I was still, like I said, a full-time student at this point. So I was doing senior level practicum work. I was in a full course load and I was working a job, being paid part-time, working full-time. And you were my only saving grace during that time, I swear, like my only help. But essentially, I got sent home from school and I was already married at the time. Of course, me and Andy were already married. So I was living on campus here at Campbell Street in one of the houses that ministers stay in. And I was just here and so I was hanging out in the office a whole lot. We were trying to make the decision like, okay, what is this? Are we going to meet this Sunday? And I remember that Wednesday we had announced like, hey, we're going to meet Sunday. And then the next day, the first COVID case in Jackson was discovered. And at this time we had, you got to think no one in this town, I don't think, knew what COVID was. And if we did, we just hadn't educated ourselves enough to spread the news around. I mean, we thought this was like a terrible, and it was, but we thought like everyone was going to get it and that it was going to kill us. I mean, like it was scary. I remember. And we had, and we formed a COVID task force with a bunch of health professionals here, and the leadership team met with them. It was a really healthy discussion, but they erred on the side of caution. And so Wednesday we said, we're going to meet Sunday. Thursday, they said, no, we're not. And so Thursday, after that first case was discovered, they were like, okay, so we've been live streaming just the message, but what if we live streamed the whole service? And I was like, okay, because I'm a 2 on the Enneagram and my goal in life is to please everybody. And so I was like, I will do whatever you ask of me. And I called Josh and I was like, okay, here's the deal. You can tell I'm old because I do a phone like this. I was like, okay, Josh, here's the deal. We need to make an entire church service in 2 days. We have Friday and Saturday to set it all up, get the equipment we need, set it all up, record it, edit it, and upload it, and find some way to mass, like distribute it to people. And Josh was like, okay. This was also in the middle of a worship center remodel. So it is literal chaos in the worship center. And we're having to run, hundreds of feet of cable to this janky little setup we had with a camera on a ladder with a TV in front of it, just propped up against the ladder, serving as a teleprompter, running cable all the way back to a nursery cry room where we had set up a new soundboard and this computer that we were just trying to record everything on and sync it was insane.
Those first few months were crazy. I also remember we took a window out of the cry room so we could run cables through the window.
Yes.
We
were crazy.
And thankfully I wasn't working weekends anymore then. So I got off work and I think I'm going to find the video, but all night Friday and Saturday, we just were there at church, just figuring out how to do this. And the camera set up on a rung of a ladder, and then we eventually got a second camera, but it's so truly bad. It's one of my favorite memories because of how crazy it was. It's something that no one's ever had to think of that quickly, I assume. No. And so it just how do we do? And you're what, 19, 20 at the time, 21 at the time?
I was 21 at the time. Yeah. Crazy.
And so I was 24, it's just two guys and they're, just figuring it out as YouTube was Jacob's best friend.
YouTube is an actual rabbi.
So you spoke about the house you were staying in.
Yes.
I've had the pleasure of helping you move into not one, but both of the houses you have now lived in.
You're the only person who can claim that.
I'll take it gladly. It's a badge that I think you should make me so I could wear it. But weirdly enough, the first time we moved into your house, I believe it was pouring rain. And
oh my word.
The second move, it was ice. It had snowed or ice the night before.
Yes.
And walk us through either of those moves. Both of those moves are just some fun memory. Do you have any?
This is, I don't know, maybe December 30th, I believe, because it was our New Year's service. We were doing a New Year's service this same day. And I had just come home the day before. My dad was going to bring this giant truck of our stuff up so we could actually move into our house. Okay, that's you remember this now. Yes. We get home at midnight. We get home at midnight, and I have to wake up super early the next day. My dad does not get to my house until 5:30 in the morning. And so I'm groggily, waking up, hello, and he comes inside. I go ahead and just get up. I go get ready, get stuff ready for church. I'm fluffing the Christmas trees, all the good stuff that a worship pastor does. And I am essentially just thinking the whole time, I hope it stops raining because it's been pouring rain. Well, during this time that I am over in the building, early in the morning trying to get stuff. My dad has tried to back the truck, this giant, I mean, I cannot tell you how heavy this truck is, into the muddy yard of the church house when there is a driveway 20 feet away he could have come up. He gets the truck stuck and cannot get it unstuck, and has to pay like $200 to get towed like 4 feet, literally, out of the yard. It was embarrassing. So then we go to church happens, it's still pouring down rain, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And these wonderful people, the Bakers and Josh, are still willing to move me in, including a piano into my home in the pouring rain. Pianos are very heavy, if you don't know. It's an upright, not a baby like grand or anything. So it wasn't terrible, but it was still terrible. And so we get all this stuff in, and Andy, my wife, is inside wiping stuff down. And I remember at one point we were bringing in my dining room table, and like we had lost the base, but we had the top, and we just couldn't figure out anything. And Josh was just like, literally came in. He was drenched. And he took both of his hands and went like this. He was like, okay, let's take a minute and let's assess. and that's what we did. We took a minute and we assessed. And I swear to you, after we assessed, it went 5 times quicker, because there was just so much chaos happening. One, because my father was involved. If you know my father, we love him. We know him. We love him. But he is just an interesting man. And so once that happened, it was just like, okay, this can be finished now.
So tell everyone a little bit about your job as a worship minister. What does it look like? What do you do for people that might not know?
Generally, my responsibilities fall to like the Sunday morning, like worship experience, oversee our praise team. I get all our volunteers. I manage the media booth. I do all of the AV prep, and then I organize the volunteers for that as well. I love my job. I love my job because I don't know, there's just so much closeness in that moment for our church, and getting to sort of help develop that and be a part of making that happen. I don't know. There's just a sense of like a lot of accomplishment in that, you know what I mean? And then now in my new role as the equipping minister, I also oversee like our connections ministry. And so essentially my job is to equip people with opportunities to become disciples of Jesus. All I want for people is to experience like life to the fullest, whatever that looks like for them. And I feel like I get to help them find that next step and walk through that next step. And I love that because that everyone is different. And there's not like this like pattern that everyone has to follow so they can get everything right. Like it's like getting to know people and finding like what their passions are, what their talents are, and being like, hey, that's God in you. Like when you're talking like that, when you're doing those things, that's God. Like live into that, you know?
That is a perfect role for you. I'm so excited
I've
to
loved
see
it.
what you're able to do with that.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't know that was congratulations. Thanks. On that. That's fantastic.
I picked that up. I picked that up from Josh. If you're wondering, that's what I'm doing with my non-existent hair is doing exactly what Josh does when he feels accomplished about something.
you just toss your hair over your shoulder.
I'm not I'm not half as fabulous. So
not true. First of all. Second of all, something that I always really admired about you on the worship minister side, because I got to experience that a lot, is you were really good at picking songs that went with the lesson that was going to be spoken about that day, but also told a story. How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really given a thought to that. I feel like I definitely didn't have a class on it, and you'll know this as much as anybody. Josh and I both were raised in more traditional environments than the ones we found ourselves at Campbell Street. And Campbell Street offered me a lot of freedom to ask questions and to really make my faith my own and develop it into something that was a lot more substantial, for me at least, not better by any means, but just different, looked different. And it was more tangible and easier for me to then carry out in that way. And so I think in that process of me being at Campbell Street, coming on as a volunteer worship leader, getting hired on part-time as the worship minister, then got hired on full-time in worship and media, the more time I was able to spend with the senior leadership, the more time I was able to spend with Danny Sorrell, who is our lead minister, and you know and love and knows and loves you, that he has really helped to develop me into not just a worship leader, but a worship minister, like someone who is trying to find the heart and the purpose behind being there, and not just offer that, but try to pull that out of people too.
And speaking of, you mentioned earlier about how you don't want to change people, you just want to love them. Jacob is the first person affiliated with a church, ever working for a church, who I knew had a religious background that I ever came out to. And so I've experienced that firsthand. And so I want to say thank you for that. I've always felt loved and safe and welcome with you and your wife, and your house, and you guys hold such special memories. I'm not going to get too emotional, but I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to say thank you, and I love you guys.
Thank you. We love you too. And
yes, and thank you.
I mean, it meant a lot that we had the relationship, and you knew that I was a safe person. That meant a lot to me, because, you know, I do want to love people, and especially someone like you who's my friend, you know, like, so I appreciated you being able to trust me with that. I really did.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is one of your favorite stories that involves me? Do any come to mind that we haven't talked about already?
Okay. Are you ready for this? Okay. So probably one of my favorite memories. This memory is incredible. So I believe it was right after you had left your job with WBBJ and you'd started working with the Bramlett Group, which, for those of you listening, that was a PR firm that Josh went to work for as a videographer for a little while. Mm-hmm. We were with him through all these life changes. We're just his best friends. Be envious of us. But essentially, we were celebrating because who we had known before was this character that we called Josh After Dark, because if Josh stayed up with us past 8:30, it was like a whole different person, because he was exhausted because he had been up since like 2:30 a.m. because he had to get to work. He was a morning news anchor. And so if he got delirious after 8:30, so we called him Josh After Dark. So we were celebrating the death of Josh After Dark, essentially, because he was going to have a normal work schedule. And the way we celebrated was we each brought chicken nuggets, which happens to be Josh's favorite food, and also a food that he is allergic to. He chokes when he eats chicken. And yet we, in our stupidity, because it's his favorite, said, okay, what we'll do is we'll each go get chicken nuggets from every different chicken restaurant in Jackson, and we'll bring it and lay it out on our friend's table. It was Andy and Ashley Frizzell's house that we were at. We laid it out on their kitchen table, and we had this chicken nugget feast. Which, saying that out loud sounds insane, and it probably was, but it was so sweet and so special because we were just doing it for Josh, even though it could have possibly killed him. And we joked about that. We were like, oh, Josh, please don't die. Please don't die in front of us as we celebrate you. But that's just, I love that memory.
Yes, they did. They went and bought chicken nuggets from all different kinds of places, and then we played a game where we had to, Eden, Andy's daughter, had numbered them, but we didn't know which ones were which. So she had like a cheat sheet, and she was like, okay, try number 1, and we had to try it, and then we had to guess where it was from. I got them all right. Thank you very much. So if any chicken nugget places want to sponsor me, I'm here for it, and I will gladly take
Wendy's spicy nuggets. Hit us up.
I don't want spicy, just regular. Regular is fine. We don't need to get crazy.
Wendy's regular nuggets. Hit us up. Don't.
Thank you very much. And if people want to keep up with your story or keep up with the church's story, where should they go?
Well, you can find the church on all social media platforms, excluding Twitter, at cst.church. You can find me on all social media platforms, also excluding Twitter, at jcdowdy11, or on Instagram at corn.on.jacob11. But you could also pronounce that as corn on Jacob.
Well, Jacob, thank you so much. I love you, friend.
Yes.
I'm
I
so
love you too.
glad we got to do this.
Me too. Thank you so much for asking me. This has been a joy.
Thanks so much for listening to the Stories on Tape podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Stories on Tape Pod and Twitter at Stories on Tape. Now, if you have a storyteller you think should be on a future episode or a story you want to share, email me at storiesontapepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to keep following our guests and their stories too. Links to all of their social medias are in the description. Can't wait to share more stories with you.